I'm Brooklyn Kelly. I'm 32 years old. And yesterday, the mother who abandoned me at 2 months old sued me for $6.4 million. She held a press conference, full makeup, designer suit, tears streaming down her perfectly contoured cheeks. She told reporters I stole her inheritance, manipulated my grandfather, turned him against her. The cameras loved her. Grieving mother, victimized by her ungrateful daughter. What she didn't mention? She hasn't seen me in 8 years. Before that? Maybe 7 times in my entire life. But I have something she doesn't. 32 years of evidence. Every broken promise. Every missed birthday. Every lie documented by the grandparents who actually raised me. My grandfather, Edmund Kelly, taught me something important. Truth backed by evidence is the most powerful weapon in any fight. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been abandoned by family who suddenly want something from you? The lawsuit papers arrived at my Manhattan law office on a Tuesday morning. I'm a senior corporate attorney at Morrison & Chase. I was reviewing contracts when my assistant knocked. Brooklyn, there's a process server here for you. My stomach dropped. Nothing good comes from process servers. Victoria Kelly Morgan and Richard Morgan versus Brooklyn Kelly. Estate dispute. They were contesting my grandfather's will, claiming undue influence, diminished capacity, elder abuse. My phone buzzed. Text from a colleague. Are you seeing this? Channel 4 News. I pulled up the live stream. There she was. Victoria, my mother, technically. Auburn hair like mine, perfectly styled. Green eyes like mine, glistening with manufactured tears. My father was a brilliant man, she said, voice breaking at precise moments. But in his final years, he fell under my daughter's influence. She isolated him, manipulated him into leaving everything to her. She dabbed her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I just want justice. I felt physically ill. A colleague knocked. Brooklyn, you okay? That's your mother? Biologically, I managed. She left me with my grandparents at 2 months old and never came back. The comments section on the news site loaded. Half supported her. Poor mother. Stolen inheritance. Family should take care of family. Children can be so cruel. They didn't know. They couldn't know. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a photograph. Me at 5 years old, gap-toothed smile, sitting between my grandmother Catherine and grandfather Edmund on the porch swing of their upstate New York home. Summer sunshine. Grandmother's hibiscus flowers blooming in the background. The people who raised me, who loved me unconditionally for 32 years. My phone rang. Daniel Rosenberg, the attorney who handled grandfather's estate. Brooklyn, I just saw the news. We need to meet. Tonight. That evening, in Daniel's office overlooking Central Park, he laid out the battle ahead. Daniel was 45, sharp-eyed, with the kind of methodical mind that made him Manhattan's top estate litigation lawyer. He'd lost his own parents young. He understood what it meant to be raised by people who chose you. Victoria's hired Richard Dale, he said. Expensive, aggressive, media savvy. They're not just fighting in court, they're fighting in public opinion. Can they win? My voice sounded small. Daniel opened a file box. Inside were leather journals, dozens of them. My grandfather's meticulous handwriting covered every page. Your grandfather saw this coming. He prepared. These journals document 32 years of Victoria's absence, every broken promise, every time she asked for money and didn't visit, every birthday she missed. He pulled out another box. Your grandmother, Catherine's scrapbooks, photographs of every milestone in your life. Notice anything? I flipped through the pages. Kindergarten graduation, middle school honor roll, high school valedictorian speech, law school commencement. In every single photograph, Edmund and Catherine smiled beside me. Victoria appeared in exactly 0. We also have bank records, Daniel continued. Over 20 years, Edmund sent Victoria $892,000. Want to guess how many times she visited? 7 times, I whispered. I counted. We're going to tell that story, Brooklyn. The real story. But you need to be ready. This will get ugly. They'll paint you as a manipulator, a gold digger, someone who preyed on an elderly man. The media will dig into your life. Can you handle that? I touched the locket around my neck. Inside was a photo of grandmother Catherine and grandfather Edmund. Catherine had given it to me on my 16th birthday. One of the years Victoria sent a single card with $50 inside, signed only with V. Grandma always said, "Truth doesn't fade, lies do." I looked at Daniel. They deserve better than a quiet settlement. They deserve the truth told loudly. Let's go to trial. Daniel smiled slightly. Your grandfather would be proud, but there's something else you should know. I've been documenting everything since he changed his will 12 years ago. He knew Victoria would fight this. He left you more than money, Brooklyn. He left you the truth. Walking home through Manhattan that night, past couples having dinner at sidewalk cafes, past families with strollers, I thought about Sunday dinners. For 32 years, I'd never missed one. Not once. Even during law school at Columbia, even during the bar exam prep, even during my worst breakup and my best friend's destination wedding. Every Sunday at 6 o'clock, I'd be at that table with Edmund and Catherine. Classical music on the radio. Grandmother's apple strudel cooling on the counter. Grandfather's philosophical discussions about justice, ethics, the meaning of family. Family isn't who gave birth to you, Brooklyn, he'd said more times than I could count. It's who shows up, day after day, year after year. That's family. My phone buzzed again. A reminder I'd set years ago. Sunday dinner tradition. 32 years? Never missed once. Victoria thought this was about money. She was wrong. This was about protecting the memory of the 2 people who'd shown up for me every single day of my life. The 2 people who'd chosen me when my own mother couldn't. They thought I'd be easy prey. They thought I'd settle quietly to avoid the scandal. But they forgot something important. I was raised by a philosophy professor who taught me that truth, backed by evidence, is the most powerful weapon in any fight. And I had 32 years of evidence they didn't know existed. They had no idea what was coming next. The story started long before I was born. My mother Victoria was 26, beautiful, ambitious, and absolutely certain that motherhood was not for her. She'd been climbing the fashion industry ladder, traveling between Milan, Paris, and New York, when she discovered she was pregnant. My father, whoever he was, disappeared from the picture immediately. Victoria never spoke about him. Still hasn't. I learned the details years later from grandmother Catherine on one of those quiet Saturday mornings in her garden when the truth felt safe enough to share. Victoria showed up at Edmund and Catherine's upstate New York home when I was 6 weeks old. She stood in their doorway, designer suitcase in one hand, infant car seat in the other. I can't do this, she'd said. Motherhood isn't for me. Milan Fashion Week is my chance. You understand, right? You'll take care of her for a few months? 2 months became 6. 6 months became a year. A year became forever. My first birthday came. Edmund and Catherine baked a small cake, took photos, waited by the phone. Victoria called 3 weeks later from Paris. She didn't ask about me. She needed $1,500 for a business opportunity. Catherine wrote in her journal that night. I found the entry years later when I was organizing their things after they passed. Sent the money. Didn't mention Brooklyn's birthday. How do you tell a 1-year-old that her mother forgot? You don't. You just love her harder. That became the pattern. Every few months, Victoria would call or email, never to check on me, always to ask for money. And Edmund, gentle and kind and desperately hoping his daughter would change, always sent it. Christmas 1995. I was 5 years old. Victoria had promised to visit, had promised to spend the holidays with us. I'd helped grandmother decorate the tree, helped grandfather string lights across the porch. We set up the guest bedroom with fresh sheets. I drew pictures to hang on the walls. She called on Christmas Eve. From Monte Carlo. She couldn't make it. Something came up. Maybe next year. I stood at the window in my red velvet dress waiting, anyway, until grandfather gently took my hand and led me to the kitchen. Let's make hot chocolate, Brooklyn. Your grandmother has marshmallows. Victoria sent a package 2 weeks later, an expensive doll I never played with. The card said, Love, V. Not Mom, just V. My 8th birthday. Catherine had organized a party, invited neighborhood kids, baked her famous apple strudel cake. Victoria had said she'd try to come. I watched the driveway all afternoon, pink party dress getting wrinkled from sitting. She called as guests were leaving. She was swamped with a fashion show in Milan. She'd send something nice. The something nice was a $50 bill in a card arriving 3 weeks late. She signed it the same way. V. Middle school graduation. I was 13, braces and acne, and that terrible haircut Catherine had tried to fix with bobby pins. I gave a speech about role models, talking about grandfather's work ethic and grandmother's kindness. They sat in the front row, video camera recording. Victoria watched the video 6 weeks later. Her response via email, Lovely, growing up so fast. She didn't come to my high school graduation either, where I gave the valedictorian speech. Didn't attend my Columbia University acceptance celebration. Didn't help with tuition, though she asked how much it was, then said she couldn't contribute right now. The financial records Daniel had obtained told their own story. Over 20 years, the pattern was identical. Money requested, 0 visits made. March 2003. Need $8,000 for apartment deposit in Rome. Sent. No visit. November 2005. Richard's company needs bridge loan, $25,000. Sent. No visit. April 2008. Medical emergency, need $15,000 immediately. Sent. No visit. Later learned there was no medical emergency. December 2010. Investment opportunity, need $50,000. Sent. No visit. The total came to $892,000. Edmund kept every bank record, every canceled check, every email request. Not out of bitterness, but out of love for me. He knew someday I might need proof that he'd tried, that Victoria had chosen absence despite his support. Catherine documented too, in her own way. She kept scrapbooks, not just photographs, but ticket stubs from my soccer games, report cards, school programs, certificates. Every milestone carefully preserved. And in the margins, in her elegant handwriting, The stories Victoria missed. Brooklyn's first day of kindergarten. She cried for 5 minutes, then marched into that classroom like she owned it. Called Victoria to share the moment. She was in a meeting in Paris, said she'd call back. Never did. Brooklyn scored the winning goal at her soccer tournament today. Edmund bought her ice cream after. We called Victoria to tell her. She asked if we could send $5,000 for a business expense instead of telling us congratulations. Brooklyn got into Columbia Law School. Full scholarship. We're so proud. Victoria's response: "Can you introduce me to corporate lawyers there for networking?" But the scrapbooks also showed the life Victoria missed. Sunday dinners, a tradition that started when I was old enough to sit in a high chair and never stopped. Every Sunday at 6 o'clock without fail. Grandfather would make his pot roast or pasta, or sometimes we'd experiment with something new. Classical music played on the old radio. Catherine would light candles, and we'd sit for hours talking about everything: philosophy, politics, books, my dreams, their memories. When I got my driver's license at 16, I drove myself every Sunday from Columbia back to their upstate home. 4 hours round trip. Law school exams, bad weather, illness, nothing stopped me. After Catherine passed away 5 years ago, I thought about ending the tradition. The house felt too empty without her. But Grandfather squeezed my hand the first Sunday after her funeral. She'd want us to keep going, Brooklyn. Family traditions survive because someone cares enough to maintain them. So we did, just the two of us. I'd bring fresh flowers for the table, hibiscus when they were in season, Catherine's favorite. I'd cook her recipes, apple strudel every few weeks. We'd set the table with her good china and talk about her as if she were still with us. Victoria called twice during those 5 years. Once to ask about life insurance proceeds. Once to request Edmund co-sign a loan. Margaret Sullivan, the Kelly family housekeeper for 35 years, watched it all. She'd been there when Victoria dropped me off as an infant. She was there for every missed birthday, every broken promise, every Sunday dinner where I showed up and Victoria didn't. That child never knew a mother's love, Margaret told me once when I was helping her fold laundry during college. But she knew better. She knew her grandparents' love. That's stronger than anything, Brooklyn. That's the kind that lasts. Margaret became another grandmother to me, teaching me to iron grandfather's shirts, sharing stories about Catherine and Edmund's courtship, slipping me cookies before dinner. She was there always, the way family should be. When Edmund changed his will 12 years ago, Catherine was still alive and completely supportive. They'd discussed it thoroughly. They'd consulted their attorney. They'd made the decision together, deliberately, and documented it extensively. Edmund had written a letter explaining the decision, sealed and left with Daniel Rosenberg. Brooklyn is my heir because she is my family, not by blood alone, but by choice, by presence, by 32 years of Sunday dinners and honest conversations and showing up when showing up mattered. Victoria had every opportunity to be a mother, to be a daughter, to be family. She chose absence. I choose Brooklyn. The letter sat in Daniel's office safe for 12 years. Edmund never told Victoria about the will change. He didn't want drama while he was alive, but he knew she'd contest it after his death. He knew she'd come back, not for reconciliation, but for money. So he prepared journals documenting her absence, financial records proving his support despite her neglect, medical records confirming his mental acuity, witness testimonies from neighbors, colleagues, friends, and most importantly, 3 decades of documented love between him, Catherine, and me. 6 months ago, Edmund died. Heart attack in his sleep, the kind doctors said was painless and quick. I got the call at 3 in the morning. I drove to the house in my pajamas and sat beside his bed until the coroner came. Margaret held my hand the entire time. Victoria showed up at the funeral. First time I'd seen her in 8 years. She wore black designer clothes and oversized sunglasses. She didn't cry during the service. She stood apart from me, speaking to people she barely knew, playing the grieving daughter role for anyone who'd watch. The will reading happened 3 days later. Daniel Rosenberg gathered everyone in his office. Me, Victoria, her husband, Richard Morgan, a wealthy real estate developer I'd met exactly twice. When Daniel announced that Edmund left his entire estate, $6.4 million in assets, including the family home, to me, Victoria's face transformed. Shock, then fury. $6.4 million? Her voice went shrill. To her? Richard leaned forward, expensive watch glinting. This is unacceptable. Obviously, he wasn't in his right mind. Daniel remained calm, professional. Judge Kelly's mental faculties were excellent until his final week. I have medical documentation. The will was executed 12 years ago with full cognitive capacity. Victoria stood abruptly. We'll challenge this. This isn't over. She was right. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. Over the next 6 months, I tried to grieve in peace. I organized grandfather's belongings. I kept the library, his favorite room, exactly as he'd left it. His leather-bound philosophy books lining the walls, his reading chair by the window, his journals stacked chronically on the desk. Margaret helped me sort through decades of accumulated life. Every item held a memory. Catherine's gardening gloves, still smelling faintly of earth and roses. Edmund's reading glasses, left on his bedside table. The photo albums Catherine had meticulously maintained. And the journals. So many journals. Edmund had documented everything, not obsessively, but thoughtfully. Notes about my achievements. Thoughts on cases he'd studied. Observations about family, love, and the nature of relationships. One entry from 15 years ago. Brooklyn asked why her mother doesn't visit. Catherine and I explained that some people aren't built for staying, but I see confusion in her eyes. She thinks she's not worth staying for. How do I teach a teenager that her worth isn't determined by one person's absence, but by the many people who choose presence? I hope someday she understands. I understood now. Reading those journals, organizing those scrapbooks, I understood completely. Edmund and Catherine hadn't just raised me. They documented raising me, creating an irrefutable record of love, presence, and family. Catherine had made me promise during her final weeks. If they ever come after you, use the journals. Use the scrapbooks. Use the truth. Your grandfather and I chose you every single day. Make sure people know that. I'd promised. And now, 6 months after Edmund's death, with Victoria's lawsuit filed and her press conference aired, and her narrative spreading, it was time to keep that promise. Daniel had spent months preparing, organizing evidence, interviewing witnesses, building our case. Margaret had agreed to testify. Dr. Sarah Chen, Edmund's physician for 25 years, had preserved all medical records. Professor James Whitmore, Edmund's colleague at Cornell for 40 years, was ready to speak about Edmund's brilliant mind and devoted relationship with me. The truth was about to come out. All of it. 32 years of documented love versus 32 years of documented absence. Sunday dinners versus broken promises. Real family versus biological obligation. Victoria's lawsuit claimed I manipulated my grandfather in his final years. But I had evidence showing I'd been present for all the years, not just the final ones. Evidence showing Edmund's mental acuity remained sharp until the very end. Evidence showing Victoria's only interest in her father was financial. The night before our response was due, I sat in Edmund's library, surrounded by his books and his memory. I pulled out one of his journals from my college years. Brooklyn graduated law school today, top of her class. Catherine and I couldn't be more proud. We called Victoria to share the news. She asked if Brooklyn could help her network with corporate lawyers. Didn't say congratulations. Didn't ask about the ceremony. Just wanted connections. Sometimes I wonder if she understands what she's missing. Then I realize she doesn't, and she never will. But Brooklyn understands. She knows the difference between presence and absence, between love and transaction. That's what matters. I closed the journal and looked at his photograph on the desk. I'll protect what you built, grandfather. I promise. The battle was about to begin, and I was ready. The media storm hit like a hurricane. Within 48 hours of Victoria's press conference, the story went viral. Daughter steals inheritance from grieving mother. Corporate lawyer manipulates elderly grandfather. Family fortune torn apart by greed. My face appeared on news sites, social media, morning talk shows. Complete strangers had opinions about my character, my ethics, my soul. The comments section became a battlefield. She looks cold, definitely a manipulator. Poor Victoria, losing her father and her inheritance. Rich people problems. They're all terrible. But some people saw through it. Why didn't the mother visit for 30 years? Where was she during the grandfather's life? Something doesn't add up about this grieving mother story. Victoria wasn't done. Richard hired a public relations firm. Suddenly, she was everywhere. Morning shows, online magazines, podcasts, each interview more tearful than the last. My father changed after my mother died, she said, on Good Morning America, dabbing at perfectly placed tears. He became isolated. Brooklyn controlled his social circle, his finances, his medical care. I tried to visit, but she made it difficult. She poisoned his mind against me. Lies. All lies, but effective ones. My law firm started getting calls. Colleagues avoided eye contact in hallways. A senior partner called me into his office. Brooklyn, these allegations. Are they true? No. My grandfather raised me. My mother abandoned me as an infant. Can you prove that? Yes. We have 32 years of documentation. Good. Because this firm's reputation matters. Your trial needs to end this quickly and cleanly. The pressure was suffocating. Former Columbia classmates texted, asking if the stories were true. Neighbors in my apartment building whispered when I passed. A man spat at me on the subway, called me a greedy witch, worse things. I started having panic attacks in the courthouse bathroom, hyperventilating in my office, waking up at 3 a.m, heart racing, wondering if the truth would even matter. Daniel filed our response with the court, including preliminary evidence. Victoria's team immediately filed counter motions. They'd hired Dr. Philip Morrison, a geriatric psychiatrist, who claimed Edmund showed signs of diminished capacity and vulnerability to undue influence. The problem? Dr. Morrison had never met Edmund. He'd based his entire assessment on reviewing circumstances, which meant guessing, which meant lying. But it looked credible in court documents. Expert testimony carried weight, even fraudulent expert testimony. Victoria's attorney, Richard Dale, was good. Expensive suits, confident voice, media-trained charm. He filed motions to exclude Edmund's journals as hearsay. He challenged the admissibility of Catherine's scrapbooks. He demanded extensive discovery into my finances, my relationships, my communications with Edmund. The legal maneuvering dragged on for weeks. Motion hearings, discovery disputes, depositions. The system grinding slowly forward while my reputation crumbled publicly. Victoria's deposition was a disaster for them. Daniel asked simple questions. She couldn't answer basic facts about my life. "What's your daughter's birthday?" Long pause. Spring sometime? May 14th. What was her college major? Liberal arts? Political science and philosophy. Where does she currently live? Manhattan somewhere. The address, Mrs. Morgan? I don't recall the exact address. You're suing your daughter for $6.4 million, but you don't know where she lives. Victoria's face flushed. We've been estranged. Whose choice was that? She chose distance. When did she choose that, Mrs. Morgan? When she was 2 months old? Richard Morgan's deposition was worse. Cold, calculating. He admitted things Victoria had tried to hide. Did you encourage Victoria to limit contact with her parents? I felt they were too controlling. How often did you visit the Kelly family home? Never. Never? In 29 years of marriage? Correct. Did you advise Victoria to minimize contact with Brooklyn? I suggested Victoria focus on building her own life rather than playing grandmother to someone else's choices. Daniel let that statement hang in the air. You referred to Brooklyn as someone else's choices. She's Victoria's daughter. Biologically. And you encouraged Victoria to maintain distance from her own daughter? I encouraged Victoria to make decisions that benefited our lifestyle. The depositions were damning, but they wouldn't become public until trial. Meanwhile, Victoria's media campaign continued. She'd posted old photos of Edmund on social media, accompanied by weepy captions. Missing my daddy today. Remembering his wisdom and kindness. He deserved better than what happened to him. The comments filled with sympathy. People who didn't know the real story, offering support to a woman who'd abandoned her infant and ignored her father unless she needed money. I wanted to respond, to tell the truth, but Daniel advised against it. Let them make noise. We'll make our case in court where it matters, where evidence speaks louder than performance. But watching the lies spread was torture. Professional colleagues distanced themselves. Invitations to charity events stopped coming. My favorite coffee shop, where I'd been a regular for years, suddenly had staff who looked at me differently. The breaking point came 6 weeks before trial. I was working late at the office when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Brooklyn Kelly? Male voice, aggressive. Speaking. You should be ashamed, stealing from your own mother. People like you make me sick. You don't know the whole, I know enough, gold-digging witch. He hung up. 3 more calls followed that night. Strangers who'd seen the news, who'd formed opinions based on Victoria's lies, who felt entitled to harass me. I sat on my office floor, back against the wall, phone buzzing with hateful messages. I thought about settling. just giving Victoria half the money and making it end, protecting what was left of my reputation. Moving on. Then I remembered Edmund's words, spoken years ago during my law school mock trials. Brooklyn, when you're defending truth, it doesn't matter how many people attack it. Truth is truth. Evidence is evidence. Your job isn't to be liked, it's to be right. I pulled out my phone and called Daniel. They're offering settlement, I said. I know. $3 million. You'd walk away with $3 million and no trial. My colleagues think I should take it. What do you think? I looked at the photograph on my desk. Me, Edmund, and Catherine at my law school graduation. Their proud faces, their love evident in every pixel. Edmund would want the truth, all of it, in open court where Victoria can't control the narrative. Are you sure? This will get uglier before it gets better. I'm sure. Then let's go to trial. Victoria's reaction to the rejected settlement came via text from a number I'd blocked years ago, but she'd clearly changed. You'll regret this, Brooklyn. I'm your mother. You owe me respect. I typed and deleted 5 responses before settling on. Respect is earned through presence, not biology. See you in court. The final weeks before trial were brutal. Victoria's team filed a motion claiming Edmund had shown signs of confusion in his final months. They'd found Dr. Morrison, the geriatric psychiatrist, who submitted an affidavit claiming Edmund exhibited behaviors consistent with diminished capacity. Daniel and I reviewed Dr. Morrison's credentials. Licensed in New Jersey, not New York. No record of ever examining Edmund. His affidavit was based entirely on speculation and assumptions. He's a hired gun, Daniel said. Victoria's paying him to say what she wants. We'll destroy him on cross. But it looked legitimate in court filings. Dr. Morrison had credentials. His testimony would sound authoritative to anyone who didn't examine it closely. Then Dr. Sarah Chen called me directly. Brooklyn, I need to tell you something. A man contacted me last month asking to collaborate on evaluating your grandfather's mental state. Dr. Philip Morrison. I declined immediately and told him Judge Kelly was cognitively brilliant until his final week. But I wanted you to know he tried to recruit me for Victoria's case. Did he say why? He said there was good money in estate litigation testimony. He practically admitted he'd say whatever was needed. Would you testify about that conversation? Absolutely. Your grandfather was my patient for 25 years. I won't let some fraud tarnish his memory. We had our counter to Morrison. But Victoria's team had one more surprise. 2 weeks before trial, they filed a motion to exclude Edmund's journals, claiming they constituted hearsay and unreliable evidence. They argued the journals were self-serving, written with knowledge of the will dispute, designed to paint Victoria negatively. The motion was absurd. Edmund had kept journals for 40 years, long before any will dispute. They were contemporaneous records, not manufactured evidence. But Richard Dale argued them convincingly, and for 3 days we didn't know if the judge would allow them. Finally, the ruling came. Journals admissible. The judge noted they were decades of documented observations, not prepared testimony. They represented Edmund's honest thoughts, recorded in real time, which made them some of the most reliable evidence possible. Victoria was furious. I saw her outside the courthouse after the ruling, screaming at Richard Dale. Those journals destroy everything. You said we'd get them excluded. I tried. The judge wasn't buying it. Then what's the plan? We go to trial. We make you sympathetic. We make her look cold. We appeal to emotion. And if that doesn't work, then we lose. That night, I visited Edmund and Catherine's graves for the first time in weeks. I'd been too overwhelmed, too consumed by the legal battle, too afraid of breaking down. The cemetery was quiet, just me and the evening breeze. I placed fresh flowers on both graves, hibiscus for Catherine, white roses for Edmund. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered. The lying, the public hatred, watching her pretend to grieve you when she never cared. It's killing me. Wind rustled through the oak trees overhead. I closed my eyes, imagining what Edmund would say. Brooklyn, truth matters most when it's hardest to tell. That's when it proves who you are. I opened my eyes, wiped away tears, and stood up. Okay, I'll do this. For you, for Grandma, for everyone who shows up when showing up matters. Walking back to my car, my phone buzzed. Text from Daniel. Trial starts Monday, 9 a.m. Everything's ready. We're going to win this. I texted back. Truth over peace. His response. Exactly. Your grandfather taught you well. The weekend before trial, I cleaned Edmund's library, dusting his philosophy books, organizing his journals chronologically, preparing the space as if he might walk in and settle into his reading chair. Margaret stopped by with apple strudel, Catherine's recipe. You're going to do fine, she said, squeezing my hand. I'll be right there in that courtroom, telling everyone what I saw for 35 years. The truth will come out, Brooklyn. It always does. Sunday evening, I sat at what had been our dinner table. Set for one now, but the tradition continued. Classical music on the radio. Candles lit. I ate Margaret's strudel and thought about all the Sundays, all the conversations, all the moments that made a family. Victoria thought this was about $6.4 million. She was wrong. This was about validating 32 years of love, about proving that Edmund and Catherine's choice to raise me, to love me, to stay was the right choice, about showing that family is defined by presence, not biology. Tomorrow, the battle would begin in court. And I was ready to fight for the truth, no matter how ugly it got. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation Monday morning. Reporters filled the gallery. News cameras lined up outside. This had become the kind of trial people followed, discussed, argued about over coffee. Victoria sat at the plaintiff's table in a navy suit, hair perfectly styled, face composed in practiced sadness. Richard beside her, expensive watch glinting. Their attorney, Richard Dale, projected confidence. I sat with Daniel, wearing my charcoal suit, grandmother's locket hidden beneath my blouse. Margaret, Dr. Chen, and Professor Whitmore sat in the first row behind us. My chosen family, present as always. Judge Anderson entered, middle-aged woman, sharp eyes, reputation for no-nonsense rulings. She reviewed the case file, then looked up. This is an estate dispute. The plaintiff, Victoria Kelly Morgan, contests her late father's will, claiming undue influence by the defendant, Brooklyn Kelly. We'll hear opening statements, then proceed with witness testimony. Mr. Dale? Richard Dale stood, buttoning his jacket smoothly. Your Honor, this case is about a daughter's love for her father. Victoria Kelly Morgan lost both parents. First her mother Catherine 5 years ago, then her father Edmund 6 months ago. In his final years, Judge Kelly, a brilliant legal mind and beloved community figure, fell under the influence of the defendant. He gestured toward me without meeting my eyes. Brooklyn Kelly systematically isolated Judge Kelly from his daughter. She controlled his social calendar, his finances, his medical care. She manipulated an elderly widower, grieving his wife, vulnerable in his final years, into leaving his entire estate to her. This isn't justice. It's elder abuse. The words stung, but I kept my face neutral, breathing, the way grandfather taught me. Daniel rose for our opening statement. His Georgia accent softened his words, but the precision remained sharp. Your Honor, opposing counsel speaks of a daughter's love, but he's describing the wrong daughter. For 32 years, Brooklyn Kelly has been the daughter Edmund and Catherine Kelly raised, loved, and chose. Victoria Kelly Morgan abandoned Brooklyn at 2 months old and maintained virtually no contact for 3 decades. The evidence will show a pattern of absence, broken promises, and financial exploitation. Judge Kelly changed his will 12 years ago when his mental faculties were unquestionably intact because he understood what family truly means. This case isn't about manipulation, it's about recognition of who stayed. The trial began with Victoria's case. Dale called character witnesses who spoke about Victoria's grief at Edmund's funeral, her love for her father, her shock at the will reading. People who'd known Victoria socially, but hadn't witnessed 32 years of absence. Then Dale called Dr. Philip Morrison. The geriatric psychiatrist walked to the stand, silver-haired, wire-rimmed glasses, projecting expertise and authority. Dr. Morrison, please explain your qualifications. I am a board-certified geriatric psychiatrist with 30 years of experience evaluating elderly patients and cognitive capacity. Did you review materials related to Judge Edmund Kelly? Yes. Medical records, testimony accounts, and circumstantial evidence. And what did you conclude? In my professional opinion, Judge Kelly exhibited signs consistent with vulnerability to undue influence in his final years. Social isolation following his wife's death, increasingly limited social circle, documented emotional dependence on the defendant. My stomach clenched. It sounded professional, authoritative, convincing. Daniel stood for cross-examination. His voice remained gentle, almost curious. Dr. Morrison, did you ever personally examine Judge Kelly? Brief pause. No, but did you ever speak with him? No, however. Did you review his complete medical records from his primary care physician? I reviewed available documentation. That's not what I asked. Did you review his complete medical records from Dr. Sarah Chen, his physician of 25 years? I was not provided those records. So your opinion is based on incomplete information? I based my assessment on provided materials. Daniel walked to our table, picked up a file. Dr. Morrison, where is your medical license currently active? I'm licensed in New Jersey. Not in New York? I'm not currently licensed in New York, no. Isn't it true your New York license was suspended 3 years ago? Dale shot to his feet. Objection. Relevance. Judge Anderson leaned forward. Overruled. Goes to credibility. The witness will answer. Morrison's face paled. There was an administrative issue. It's being resolved. An administrative issue? Weren't you suspended for providing false testimony in an estate case, claiming a deceased person had diminished capacity when medical records proved otherwise? That's not. It was more complicated than. Yes or no, Dr. Morrison? Long pause. The board found my testimony problematic. Did Victoria Kelly Morgan compensate you for your testimony today? I received standard expert witness fees. $50,000? Professional rates vary. Is that a yes? I was compensated appropriately for my time. Daniel returned to his table. No further questions for this witness. Morrison left the stand, visibly shaken. Dale tried redirect, but the damage was done. The expert witness was a hired gun with a suspended license, paid to say what Victoria needed him to say. Then Daniel began our defense. He called Dr. Sarah Chen first. She took the stand with quiet confidence. Dr. Chen, how long were you Judge Kelly's physician? 25 years. Did you see him regularly in his final years? Every 3 months for routine checkups, more frequently when he had his hip surgery 3 years ago. Can you describe his cognitive function? Judge Kelly remained intellectually sharp until his final week. He discussed current events, remembered details from decades ago, solved complex logic puzzles. At his last appointment, 3 weeks before he died, we discussed a recent Supreme Court ruling. His analysis was brilliant. Did you ever observe signs of diminished capacity or vulnerability to manipulation? Never. Judge Kelly knew his mind completely. He was one of the sharpest patients I've ever treated. Dr. Chen, did anyone ever contact you asking you to testify about Judge Kelly's mental state? Yes. Dr. Philip Morrison called me, requesting I collaborate on an evaluation. I declined immediately and told him Judge Kelly was cognitively brilliant until the very end. What was Dr. Morrison's response? He suggested there was substantial compensation available for estate litigation testimony. I informed him I don't adjust medical facts for money and ended the conversation. The courtroom murmured. Judge Anderson made notes. Daniel then presented Edmund's journals. 32 years of documentation. He read selected entries aloud, his voice carrying across the silent courtroom. December 1995. Brooklyn's Christmas play Today. She played an angel, sang her solo beautifully, called Victoria to share the moment. She was in Monte Carlo. Asked for money to cover an emergency that turned out to be a hotel bill. Sent $15,000. She didn't ask about Brooklyn's play. May 2003. Brooklyn graduated college today, summa cum laude. Catherine and I couldn't be prouder. She gave a beautiful speech about family and gratitude. Victoria sent a card 3 weeks later saying, "Congratulations." Didn't attend, didn't call, just a card. June 2012. Brooklyn passed the bar exam, highest score in New York. She celebrated with us over Sunday dinner, her tradition she's never broken. Not once in 24 years has she missed a Sunday. Victoria called yesterday asking for money for Richard's real estate investment. Didn't mention Brooklyn's achievement, even though we'd told her. Sometimes I wonder if she understands what she's missing. Then I realize she doesn't. And she never will. With each entry, Victoria's face grew harder. Richard whispered urgently to Dale, who shook his head helplessly. Margaret Sullivan took the stand next, hands folded calmly. Mrs. Sullivan, how long did you work for the Kelly family? 35 years. I was there when Brooklyn arrived as an infant. I was there until Judge Kelly passed. Please describe the family dynamics you observed. Margaret's voice was clear, factual, devastating. Judge Kelly and Mrs. Catherine raised Brooklyn with complete devotion. Every school event, every milestone, every ordinary day, they were present. They loved that child more than anything in the world. And Mrs. Morgan? I met Victoria 7 times in 35 years. She'd arrive late, leave early, spend her visits on the phone. Once, Brooklyn made her a birthday card. Victoria left it on the table when she departed. I still have it. Brooklyn saved everything her mother didn't want. Did Victoria ever request financial assistance? Regularly, always money. Never time with Brooklyn. Never interest in her daughter's life. Just requests for thousands of dollars that Judge Kelly always sent, hoping it would bring Victoria closer. It never did. Dale's cross-examination failed to shake Margaret. She was a grandmother figure telling the truth about what she'd witnessed for 3 decades. Attacking her only made Victoria look worse. Then Daniel played his final card. Your Honor, I'd like to present video testimony from Judge Edmund Kelly himself, recorded 1 month before his death. Dale objected strenuously. This is ambush evidence. It was disclosed in our filing 3 weeks ago, page 47, Daniel replied calmly. Opposing counsel had full notice. Judge Anderson reviewed her file. Objection overruled. Play the video. The courtroom lights dimmed. A screen descended. And there was grandfather, sitting in his library, looking directly into the camera. Alive, healthy, unmistakably cognitively sharp. My name is Edmund Kelly. I am 78 years old, in sound mind and clear conscience. I'm recording this because I know my daughter Victoria will challenge my will after I die. So let me be absolutely clear about my intentions and reasoning. His voice, the voice I'd heard across thousands of Sunday dinners, filled the courtroom. I leave my entire estate to Brooklyn Kelly because she is my family in every way that matters. Not just by blood, though she is my granddaughter, but by choice, by presence, by 32 years of unwavering devotion. Brooklyn has never missed a Sunday dinner, not during law school exams, not during bad weather, not during personal crises. Every single Sunday for 32 years she's been at our table. That's family. Victoria had 3 decades to be a mother. She chose absence. She had 3 decades to be a daughter to me. She chose distance unless money was needed. I sent her $892,000 over 20 years, hoping each time that it would bring her closer. It never did. I'm not bitter. I'm simply honest. Victoria is my daughter biologically, but Brooklyn is my daughter in every way that defines family. She stayed when staying was hard. She loved when loving was unpopular. She chose us every single day. Edmund leaned forward, looking directly into the camera, his expression firm. Victoria, if you're watching this from a courtroom, you're proving exactly why Brooklyn deserves everything and you deserve nothing. You came back for money, not for reconciliation. Not for your daughter. Not for me. For money. That tells me, and I hope it tells the court, everything that needs to be known. Brooklyn, if you're watching this, know that Grandmother Catherine and I loved you beyond measure. You were never second choice. You were always our first choice, our best choice, our greatest joy. Protect what we built. Honor what we stood for. And remember, family isn't who gave birth to you. It's who stayed. The screen went black. The courtroom was silent. Stunned. I wiped tears from my face. Behind me, I heard Margaret crying softly. Dr. Chen squeezed my shoulder. Victoria's face had gone white. Richard stood abruptly. We need to request a recess. Judge Anderson's expression was hard. Recess granted. 20 minutes. In the hallway, I heard Victoria and Richard arguing viciously. This was your idea, Victoria hissed. You're the one who thought we could win. That video destroyed everything. Then what do you want to do? Long pause. I don't know. When court reconvened, Dale stood reluctantly. Your Honor, in light of new information, the plaintiffs would like to request mediation. The defendant opposes mediation, Daniel responded immediately. We're prepared to proceed with full trial. Judge Anderson looked at Victoria, then at me, then at the stack of evidence on her desk. Mr. Dale, does your client wish to withdraw the lawsuit? Dale conferred with Victoria and Richard. Heated whispers. Finally, he stood. No, Your Honor, we're proceeding. But the fight had gone out of Victoria's case. Dale called 2 more witnesses who testified about Edmund's love for his daughter. But Daniel's cross-examination revealed they'd barely known the family, had never witnessed Victoria's absence firsthand. By day's end, it was clear. Victoria's narrative had collapsed. Edmund's video, the journals, the medical records, Margaret's testimony, the financial documentation, all of it created an irrefutable picture. Brooklyn stayed, Victoria left. Edmund knew the difference. He chose accordingly. Judge Anderson announced she'd render her decision the following morning. That night, Daniel and I sat in his office, reviewing everything. It's over, he said. You won. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like grief. That's because you're fighting to protect people you love. That's not winning or losing. That's honoring. I touched grandmother's locket. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. Your grandfather left you more than money, Brooklyn. He left you truth. He made sure no one could rewrite history, could erase what you meant to him. That's the real inheritance. The next morning, the courtroom filled again. Reporters, spectators, my chosen family behind me. Victoria and Richard at their table, not speaking to each other. Judge Anderson entered, sat, and looked directly at Victoria. I've reviewed all evidence and testimony. This is my ruling. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Edmund Kelly's will is valid. His mental capacity at the time of execution and throughout his life was excellent. The evidence of undue influence is non-existent. The evidence of 3 decades of abandonment by the plaintiff is overwhelming. Victoria's face crumpled. Furthermore, the plaintiff shall pay the defendant's legal fees, totaling $187,000 for bringing a frivolous lawsuit. The case is dismissed with prejudice. The gavel struck. It was over. The courtroom emptied slowly. Reporters rushed to file stories. Spectators murmured about the dramatic reversal. Victoria and Richard departed immediately, not looking at me, not speaking, just leaving the way they'd always left. Daniel shook my hand. Congratulations. You protected their legacy. Margaret hugged me tightly. They're proud of you, Brooklyn. I know it. Dr. Chen smiled. The truth won, just like Edmund taught you it would. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Brooklyn, how do you feel? Will you reconcile with your mother? What do you think about the ruling? Daniel handled them professionally. Brooklyn Kelly is grateful the truth has been recognized. Judge Kelly was a man of integrity who made deliberate, informed decisions about his estate. The court has validated those decisions. That's all we have to say. The media narrative shifted overnight. Headlines changed from "Daughter steals inheritance" to "Mother who abandoned baby loses lawsuit." Think pieces appeared about the true meaning of family. Social media discussed chosen family versus biological family. Victoria's fashion brand quietly distanced itself from her. Richard faced backlash from business partners uncomfortable with his role in the lawsuit. Their social circle in Manhattan grew suddenly smaller. I watched it all from a distance, not with satisfaction, but with exhaustion. This wasn't revenge. This was just truth, finally spoken aloud. 1 week after the ruling, Victoria sent an email. Brooklyn, perhaps we could meet privately, discuss reconciliation, move past this unpleasantness. I am still your mother. I stared at the email for a long time, remembered every broken promise, every missed birthday, every time she'd chosen absence. Then I replied simply, Victoria, you had 32 years to be my mother. You chose differently. I wish you well, but we have nothing to discuss. I blocked her email, changed my number, drew the boundaries I should have drawn years ago. Margaret helped me clear out the family home. We donated most of Edmund and Catherine's belongings to charity. I kept the library, transported every book and journal to a storage unit where I could visit them, but I sold the house. Too many memories to live there, too much grief in every room. But I preserved what mattered. The journals, the photographs, Catherine's recipes, Edmund's favorite reading chair. 6 months after the trial, I did something Edmund had suggested years ago. I established the Edmund and Catherine Kelly Foundation, dedicated to supporting children raised by grandparents or non-parental relatives. The foundation provided scholarships, housing assistance, legal support, counseling. Everything children in my situation might need. Everything I'd been lucky enough to have because of Edmund and Catherine. The first year, we helped 47 families. 47 children who understood what it meant to be chosen, to be raised by people who stayed. 1 year after the trial, I stood in Edmund's preserved library, now housed in a small office space the foundation rented. His books lined the walls. His reading chair sat by the window. This was my Sunday tradition now, coming here, sitting in his chair, reading his journals, remembering. Margaret arrived with apple strudel, still baking Catherine's recipe every week. How's the foundation doing? She asked. We've helped 200 families now, 200 children who know that family means staying. Edmund and Catherine would be so proud. That evening, I hosted Sunday dinner at my apartment. Not alone anymore. Daniel came, bringing wine and stories from his latest cases. Margaret brought the strudel. Dr. Chen arrived with flowers. Professor Whitmore from Cornell joined us, sharing memories of Edmund's brilliant mind and generous heart. My chosen family, the people who'd stood by me, who'd testified for me, who'd shown up not when it was convenient, but when it mattered. We sat around my table, classical music playing softly, and talked about everything and nothing, philosophy, current events, the foundation's work, memories of Edmund and Catherine. To absent friends, Professor Whitmore said, raising his glass. To those who taught us that family is defined by presence, not biology. We raised our glasses to Edmund and Catherine. After everyone left, I pulled out my journal. I'd started keeping one, like grandfather had, documenting not just events but thoughts, reflections, lessons learned. 1 year since the trial. 1 year since Victoria tried to rewrite history and failed. I used to think I was broken because my mother didn't want me. Now I realize I was never broken. She was. And Edmund and Catherine saw my worth when she couldn't. They chose me every single day. That's the real inheritance. Not money, not property, but knowing what love actually looks like. Knowing that family means showing up day after day, year after year. That's what I'm teaching through the foundation. That's what I'm building with my chosen family. That's what Edmund and Catherine built with me. The next morning, I visited their graves. Weekly tradition. Fresh flowers, hibiscus when I could find them, and a slice of Margaret's apple strudel, wrapped carefully, placed between the headstones. The foundation helped a 6-year-old girl this week, I told them. Her grandmother is raising her in Brooklyn. Her mother is nowhere to be found. Sound familiar? I smiled slightly. I thought about you both throughout that intake interview, remembering how you took me in, raised me, loved me unconditionally. That little girl is getting the same chance I got because of you. Wind rustled through the oak trees. A cardinal landed on a nearby branch, brilliant red against blue sky. Grandmother used to say cardinals were loved ones checking in. I hope I made you proud, not because I won the lawsuit, but because I told the truth. Your truth. The truth about what family really means. I touched grandmother's locket, still wearing it every day. Thank you for showing up. Every day for 32 years you showed up. And now I show up for others the way you showed up for me. That's the real revenge, isn't it? Not winning in court, but living well. Building something meaningful. Honoring what you taught me. Walking back to my car, I thought about Victoria. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she and Richard had separated, that she'd left New York, moved somewhere quieter, away from the social circles that had rejected her. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, just sadness that she'd never understood what she'd missed. 32 years of Sunday dinners, 32 years of conversations, 32 years of love she could have had if she'd just chosen to stay. But she hadn't. And that was her loss, not mine. My phone buzzed. Email from the foundation. A new application. Single grandmother raising 3 siblings after their parents abandoned them. Needed legal assistance, housing support, counseling. I forwarded it to our case manager with a note. Priority case. Let's help this family. This was my purpose now. Taking the pain of abandonment and transforming it into support for others. Taking Edmund and Catherine's legacy and expanding it. Helping families like ours. Proving that chosen family matters just as much, maybe more, than biological ties. That evening, I received a message from someone I didn't know. A woman who'd followed the trial, who'd been raised by her aunt after her parents left. Thank you for telling your story, for showing that we're not second choice, we're chosen, and that matters. I replied, you're exactly right. Being chosen by people who stay is better than being born to people who leave. Never forget your worth. Edmund used to say, the best revenge isn't wealth or status. It's living well while honoring those who truly loved you. He was right. I had $6.4 million now, yes. But the real inheritance was knowing what love looked like. Knowing that family means presence, not biology. Knowing that Sunday dinners matter, that showing up matters, that choice matters. Victoria could have had all of this. She could have been part of Sunday dinners, part of my life, part of something real. She chose money over presence for 32 years. And when Edmund chose presence over biology in his will, she finally understood what she'd lost. But it was too late. Some opportunities don't come twice. I kept my promise to Edmund and Catherine. I protected their legacy. I told the truth. I honored their choice to raise me, to love me, to stay. And now I was building on that foundation, helping others who understood that family isn't who gave birth to you. Family is who holds your hand at 3 a.m., who shows up for ordinary Tuesdays, who stays when leaving is easier. That's family. That's what Edmund and Catherine taught me. That's what I'm teaching others. The best revenge isn't winning in court. It's living well, building meaning, honoring those who loved you by becoming someone worth their sacrifice. Victoria tried to take their legacy. She failed. I'm protecting it, expanding it, making sure their love continues through every family the foundation helps. Every child who learns that being chosen matters more than being born. That's justice. That's healing. That's the real inheritance. If someone in your family chose absence over presence, I want you to know you deserved better. And if someone who didn't share your blood chose to stay, chose to raise you, chose to love you, they are your real family. Blood doesn't make you family. Love and presence do. So tell me in the comments, who showed up for you when your own family didn't? Who chose you when blood relatives walked away? Share your story. Let's celebrate the real families, the chosen ones, the ones who stay. Because in the end, family isn't determined by genetics. It's determined by who's sitting at your table every Sunday, who's holding your hand in hospital rooms, who's cheering at your graduations, who's staying when staying is hard. That's family. That's what matters. That's what Edmund and Catherine taught me. And that's what I'll spend the rest of my life honoring, protecting, and passing forward.